Amaya Carter moved through the hallway with her hood up, one hand brushing the curve of her belly. The boys had been circling her for weeks, smirking, whispering. She'd learned to keep quiet, to survive. But she always feared one thing more than their words. What would happen if they found out about the baby? Now they had. The secret she'd guarded so carefully had slipped, and the danger was real. To them, she was just another scared, lonely black girl. An easy target. But what they didn't know was that her father was a retired Delta Force operative, already tracking every name, every move. And Amaya wasn't shrinking anymore. They had made a mistake. Now, she was going to teach them exactly what that meant. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The morning frost coated the windows of Amaya Carter's bedroom as she stood before her full-length mirror, carefully layering her second hoodie over the first. The thick cotton fabric hung loose enough to hide her growing belly. She smoothed the material down, turning sideways to check her reflection. 5 months, she whispered to herself, running a hand over the bump that only she and her parents knew about. The navy blue hoodie did its job well. To everyone else at Clark County High, she was just another quiet student trying to stay warm in the Georgia winter. Amaya grabbed her backpack, slinging it over one shoulder before heading downstairs. The smell of coffee and bacon filled the kitchen where her father, Darius, sat at the table reading news on his tablet. His military posture never quite relaxed, even in retirement. Her mother, Lila, stood at the stove, humming softly while flipping pancakes. "Morning, baby," Lila said warmly. "Sit down and eat something before school." "Not hungry," Amaya replied. But her father's steady gaze made her reconsider. She sat down and accepted a plate of pancakes. "You need your strength," Darius said quietly. His voice carried the calm authority of his Delta Force training, but his eyes were gentle. "Both of you do." Amaya nodded, taking small bites. Her parents had been nothing but supportive since she'd told them about the pregnancy, never judging, never pushing. When she'd insisted on keeping it private until after graduation, they'd respected her choice. Even now, watching her prepare for another day of hiding, they held their peace. The drive to school was quiet, just the soft purr of the engine and the crunch of tires on frosted pavement. Amaya parked in her usual spot at the far end of the lot, away from the main entrance where the popular kids gathered. As she walked toward the building, she spotted them. Brent Caldwell leaning against his expensive SUV, flanked by Cole Dwyer and Trevor Nash. "Hey, Carter," Brent called out as she passed, his voice carrying that familiar edge of mockery. "Looking a little chunky in that hoodie. Winter weight?" Cole snickered, but Trevor just looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Amaya kept walking, her face neutral. She'd learned long ago not to give them the satisfaction of a response. Inside, the halls of Clark County High bustled with morning activity. Amaya moved through the crowd like a ghost, keeping to the edges, timing her movements between classes to avoid the rush. In AP English, she sat in the back corner, taking notes while Ms. Patterson discussed the scarlet letter. The irony wasn't lost on her. During lunch, she found her usual quiet spot in the library, pulling out her calculus homework. The librarian, Mrs. Chen, gave her a kind smile, but didn't interrupt her studies. This was her routine: stay busy, stay invisible, stay focused on the future. But today, something felt different. Maybe it was the way Brent and his friends watched her in the hallway between classes, whispering and smirking. Or how Cole deliberately bumped her shoulder as she walked to chemistry, making her stumble. "Careful there, Carter," he sneered. "Wouldn't want you to fall." The words carried a threat she couldn't quite decode, but she straightened her spine and kept walking. Her father had taught her about situational awareness, how to read a room, assess threats, stay alert without looking afraid. She used those lessons now, watching reflections in windows and listening for footsteps behind her. When the final bell rang, Amaya waited in her last classroom until the halls cleared before making her way to her car. The parking lot was nearly empty, but she could see Brent's SUV still parked near the entrance, the three boys lounging inside. She took the long way around, avoiding their line of sight. At home, she found her father in his study, cleaning his service weapon, a habit he'd never broken. He looked up as she entered, reading her expression with practiced ease. "Rough day?" he asked, his hands never stopping their mechanical movement. "The usual," she replied, dropping her backpack by the door. "Just tired of hiding." Darius set down the gun parts, giving her his full attention. "You don't have to hide if you don't want to. We'll support whatever you choose." "I know, Dad." Amaya managed a small smile. "But I want to do this my way. Just a few more months until graduation." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. They both knew there was more to it. The whispers that would follow her through the halls, the judgment from teachers who'd praised her potential, the cruel jokes from boys like Brent who already saw her as a target. But Darius had taught her something else, too, the importance of choosing your own battles. That night, lying in bed, Amaya couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, one hand resting on her stomach, thinking about the day's small confrontations. The room was quiet, except for the soft tick of her clock and the distant sound of her parents talking downstairs. Then she felt it, a flutter, like butterfly wings, then a distinct bump against her palm. Her breath caught. The baby was kicking for the first time. Amaya lay still, tears welling in her eyes as she felt another gentle kick. In that moment, all the day's tensions melted away. This was real. This was happening. And no matter what anyone at school thought or said, she wasn't alone. She fell asleep with her hand still cradling her stomach, the memory of that first kick carrying her into dreams. The next morning, frost still clung to the grass as Amaya climbed into the passenger seat of her mother's car. Lila turned up the heat, letting the engine warm before pulling out of the driveway. "Dr. Martinez was happy with your blood pressure numbers yesterday," Lila said, keeping her eyes on the road. "And the baby's heartbeat was nice and strong." "Yeah." Amaya smiled, remembering the steady whoosh-whoosh sound from the monitor. "She said everything looks normal. Did you want to know the gender? I noticed you looked away when she offered." "Not yet." Amaya adjusted her hoodie, making sure it fell right. "I just want to focus on getting through each day at school first." Lila reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. "I know it's hard, baby. Your father and I worry about you carrying all this alone." "I'm not alone," Amaya said firmly. "I have you guys. That's enough for now." The school parking lot was filling up when they arrived. Amaya spotted Brent's SUV in its usual spot near the entrance, but the boys weren't hanging around outside today. She said goodbye to her mother and hurried inside, keeping her head down. Her morning classes passed quietly until gym period. Since discovering her pregnancy, Amaya had been sitting out most activities with a doctor's note, watching from the bleachers while working on homework. Today, she felt Brent's eyes on her more than usual. He kept glancing her way during basketball, nudging Cole and whispering. When class ended, Brent walked past her spot on the bleachers. "Nice waddling earlier, Carter," he said, just loud enough for her to hear. "Putting on some serious weight these days." Amaya's hands tightened on her textbook, but she kept her expression neutral. She waited until everyone else had left before heading to the locker room to change. The hallway was crowded between periods. Amaya tried to stick close to the wall, but Cole came around the corner fast, deliberately knocking into her shoulder. Her books scattered across the floor. "Oops," Cole said with fake concern. "My bad." Behind him, Trevor let out a nervous laugh. Amaya knelt to gather her things, hearing their whispers as they passed. "Definitely getting bigger. Bet we could find out. Assembly next week." The rest was lost in the hall noise, but something in their tone made her stomach clench. She hurried to her next class, that feeling of being watched following her for the rest of the day. At home that afternoon, she found her father in his study again. Darius looked up from his computer screen as she entered. "Everything okay at school?" he asked, his voice casual but his eyes sharp. "Fine," Amaya said automatically, then hesitated. "Just, some of the guys are watching me more lately. Making comments." Darius's expression didn't change, but his posture shifted slightly, the subtle alertness of a soldier assessing a threat. "Which guys?" "It's nothing, Dad. Just Brent Caldwell and his friends being jerks like usual." "Caldwell," Darius repeated softly. He turned back to his computer, fingers moving across the keyboard. "The school board chairman's son?" "Yeah." "Him and Cole Dwyer and Trevor Nash." Amaya dropped into the chair across from his desk. "They've always been bullies, but lately it feels different, more focused." Darius nodded, still typing. "Tell me if it gets worse." "Dad, you don't need to—" "I'm just gathering information," he said calmly. "Knowledge is power, remember?" Amaya recognized the quiet intensity in his voice, the same tone he used when teaching her self-defense or explaining tactical awareness. She watched as he pulled up social media profiles, noting connections and patterns. Later that evening, after Amaya had gone upstairs to study, Darius accessed the school's online portal. Years of military intelligence work had given him skills that most parents didn't have. Within minutes, he was scrolling through disciplinary records, noting repeated incidents involving Brent and his friends that had been marked as resolved with minimal consequences. At the bottom of each report was a familiar signature: James Caldwell, school board chairman. Darius printed the records silently, adding them to a growing file on his desk. His face remained impassive, but his jaw tightened as he read through the pattern of harassment and cover-ups. The library was quiet on Wednesday afternoon, most students having already left for the day. Amaya walked between the tall shelves, trailing her fingers along the spines of old history books. She had an hour to kill before track practice, and the library was her sanctuary, the one place she could breathe without feeling watched. Or so she thought. Behind the American Revolution section, Brent Caldwell stood motionless, watching through the gaps between books as Amaya settled at a corner table. She pulled out her chemistry homework and a granola bar, unaware of his presence. Brent's phone buzzed. A text from Cole. "Where you at?" "Library," he typed back. "Found her. Meet me at her locker in 20. He watched Amaya for a few more minutes, noting how she unconsciously touched her stomach when she shifted in her chair. His lips curled into a cold smile before he slipped away. 20 minutes later, Amaya packed up her books and headed to the locker room to change for practice. As soon as she disappeared down the hall, 3 figures emerged from around the corner. "You sure about this?" Trevor asked, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "Shut up," Brent snapped. He pulled a piece of paper from his pocket, a combination he'd gotten from his father's files. "Just keep watch." Cole grinned as Brent worked the lock. "Can't believe she actually keeps it in here." "Of course she does," Brent muttered. "Where else would Little Miss Perfect hide her dirty secret?" The locker clicked open. They worked quickly, rifling through Amaya's neat stacks of folders and notebooks. Cole found it first, a folded paper tucked into her planner. "Got it," he whispered, holding up the clinic appointment slip. Brent snatched it and unfolded it carefully. His eyes widened at the grainy ultrasound image stapled to the corner. "Well, well, looks like we were right." Trevor shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should just take a picture," Brent ordered, shoving the paper at him. "Now!" Trevor's hands shook as he snapped the photo with his phone. The sound of distant voices made them all freeze. "Send it to the group," Brent said, carefully returning the paper exactly as they'd found it. "And Don't mess this up." They closed the locker and scattered just as the girls' track team started filing into the hallway. Amaya walked past minutes later in her practice clothes, completely unaware of what had just happened. Out on the track, she ran her usual laps at an easy pace, modified for her condition. The late afternoon sun was warm on her face, but something felt off, a heaviness in the air, like before a storm. She brushed it off as pregnancy anxiety and focused on her breathing. At home that evening, the feeling lingered. Amaya sat at the kitchen table picking at her dinner while her parents discussed their days. "You're quiet tonight," Lila observed, touching her daughter's arm. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," Amaya said, but her voice was uncertain. I don't know. Weird feeling." Darius looked up from his plate, studying her face. "What kind of weird feeling?" "Like something's wrong, but I can't put my finger on it." Amaya shrugged. "I'm probably just being paranoid." Her father was silent for a moment. "Trust those instincts," he finally said. "They're usually right." After dinner, Amaya went upstairs to shower. Through her bedroom window, she noticed her father outside with a ladder and some tools. "What's Dad doing?" she asked her mother, who was folding laundry. "Installing a security camera," Lila said casually. "You know how he is, always thinking about safety." Darius worked methodically, mounting the small camera under the porch eave where it had a clear view of the front yard and driveway. Years of experience had taught him to prepare for threats before they materialized. Something in his daughter's unease had triggered his own warning signals. Across town, Brent sat in his bedroom staring at his phone. The ultrasound photo glowed on the screen, proof of Amaya's secret. His thumb hovered over the keyboard before typing, "Tomorrow, school assembly. She's done." He hit send, and the message appeared in the group chat with Cole and Trevor. Cole responded immediately with a thumbs-up emoji. Trevor's status showed he'd read the message, but he didn't reply. Thursday morning arrived with a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Students filed into Clark County High's gymnasium, their footsteps and chatter echoing off the polished floors. Metal bleachers creaked as teenagers found their spots, segregating themselves into their usual cliques and social circles. Amaya slipped in quietly through the side entrance, wearing her biggest hoodie despite the warmth of the packed gym. She found a spot near the back of the junior section, grateful for the shadows cast by the overhead lights. Her hands instinctively crossed over her stomach as she sat down. Near the front, Brent Caldwell lounged with his usual smirk, Cole and Trevor flanking him like loyal guards. He kept checking his phone, barely acknowledging the girls trying to get his attention. Trevor's face was pale, his leg bouncing nervously. "You okay?" Cole whispered, elbowing Trevor. "Just do what we planned," Brent cut in before Trevor could answer. He stood up, straightening his Letterman jacket. "I'll be right back." Principal Matthews stepped up to the podium, tapping the microphone. "Good morning, Clark County High. Welcome to our annual Senior Awards Assembly." His voice boomed through the speakers as Brent slipped behind the stage curtain, unnoticed in the general commotion. The AV system was already set up for the presentation. A laptop connected to the giant projection screen that dominated the back wall. The student tech volunteer was supposed to be manning it, but Brent had made sure the kid would be sick today. He pulled a USB drive from his pocket, his hands steady as he plugged it in. Back in the bleachers, Amaya half-listened as Matthews droned through his opening speech. Something about academic excellence and school pride. She noticed Cole checking his phone repeatedly, Trevor looking like he might throw up. "And now," Matthews continued, "we'll begin by recognizing our top-achieving seniors." The screen behind him suddenly flickered. The principal's prepared slideshow disappeared, replaced by a grainy black-and-white image that filled the entire wall. For a moment, no one seemed to understand what they were looking at. Then someone gasped. It was an ultrasound, and at the top, in clear medical text, was the name Carter Amaya. The gymnasium erupted. Whispers turned to murmurs, turned to shocked laughter. Hundreds of heads swiveled, searching for her face in the crowd. Phones came out, capturing the moment, preserving her humiliation in digital permanence. Amaya couldn't breathe. The room spun as her worst nightmare played out in front of the entire school. She saw Cole's satisfied grin, Trevor's guilty face turned away, and Brent, emerging from behind the stage, looking directly at her with that cruel smile she'd come to know so well. Principal Matthews finally noticed the screen, fumbling with the microphone. There seems to be some technical difficulty. But no one was listening to him anymore. The damage was done. Someone shouted something crude about baby mama drama. More laughter followed. Teachers stood awkwardly, unsure how to respond, their inaction speaking volumes. Amaya's legs moved before her brain could catch up. She stood, her notebook falling forgotten to the floor. The crowd parted as she stumbled down the bleachers, some students pointing, others recording on their phones. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Not here, not in front of them. "Hey, Carter!" Brent's voice cut through the chaos. "Guess you couldn't keep that secret forever." She pushed through the heavy gymnasium doors, the sound of laughter following her into the hallway. Her footsteps echoed as she ran, past rows of lockers that seemed to stretch endlessly, past classroom windows where curious faces pressed against the glass. The side exit burst open under her hands, and the morning sun hit her face like a spotlight. She made it halfway across the parking lot before the tears finally came, hot and angry down her cheeks. Her chest heaved with sobs she'd been holding back for months. A familiar engine rumble made her look up. Her father's black SUV was already pulling into the lot, as if he'd known she'd need him. Darius Carter's face was a mask of controlled fury as he stopped beside her. The passenger door opened. Amaya climbed in without a word, just as the first students began spilling out of the building behind her, drawn by the drama they didn't want to miss. The last thing she saw as they pulled away was Brent standing at the top of the steps, still wearing that triumphant smirk that would haunt her dreams. But he didn't see what she saw. The way her father's hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white with barely contained rage. He didn't know what she knew, that this wasn't the end of the story. This was just the beginning. The living room clock ticked steadily as Amaya paced back and forth across the carpet, her footsteps heavy with anger and shame. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the heating system and the occasional creak of the leather armchair where her father sat, watching her with patient eyes. She'd changed into sweatpants and one of her dad's old army t-shirts, but couldn't shake the feeling of being exposed. Her phone buzzed constantly on the coffee table. Messages, notifications, probably more mockery. She hadn't looked at it since they got home. "They had my ultrasound," she finally said, her voice cracking. "They broke into my locker and stole it." Her hands trembled as she ran them through her hair. Everyone saw. Everyone knows. Darius remained silent, but his jaw tightened slightly. He'd been that way since picking her up. Careful, controlled, letting her process. It was the same face he wore when analyzing battlefield intelligence, taking in every detail before making a move. The whole school was laughing. Amaya's pacing quickened. And the teachers just stood there. Principal Matthews couldn't even... She stopped suddenly, pressing her palms against her eyes. God, the way they all looked at me. Her father shifted slightly in his chair. "We can talk to the school board tomorrow. File a formal complaint. They won't do anything." Amaya dropped her hands, revealing eyes bright with tears. "Brent's dad chairs the board. They never do anything to those boys." Her voice rose with each word. "They just get away with it, over and over, and everyone knows it, and nobody stops them. And I can't. Her words dissolved into sobs. Darius stood, crossing the room in 3 quick strides to pull her into a hug. Amaya buried her face in his chest, crying like she hadn't since she first found out she was pregnant. Her father's steady heartbeat anchored her as the day's humiliation poured out. When she finally pulled back, wiping her eyes, Darius spoke softly. "Maybe you should stay home for a while, just until things—" "No." Amaya's response was sharp, immediate. She stepped away from him, squaring her shoulders. "I'm not hiding." "Amaya, they wanted to shame me, Dad. They wanted to make me run away and disappear." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "But I won't give them that. I don't want your protection. I want them to pay." Something shifted in Darius's expression. A gleam of recognition, perhaps even pride. He walked to his office down the hall, returning with a thick manila folder. "I had a feeling you might say that." Amaya stared at the folder. "What is that?" "I've been watching them." He laid it on the coffee table, spreading out papers covered in his precise handwriting. "Since you mentioned feeling targeted, social media posts, disciplinary records, family connections." He pointed to a particularly detailed page. "Brent's father has 3 private harassment complaints buried in school board records. Trevor's family lost a lawsuit last year, settled out of court, and Cole's college acceptance might not be as secure as he thinks." Amaya sat down slowly, scanning the documents. "You've been investigating them?" "It's what I do." Darius's voice was matter-of-fact. "Or did. 20 years in Delta Force teaches you to identify threats before they become problems." He paused, studying her face. "But I was waiting to see what you wanted to do about it. I want them exposed." Amaya's fingers traced the edge of a printed screenshot. "Not just for me, for everyone they've hurt." She looked up at her father. "Will you help me?" Darius pulled up a chair beside her. "Tell me what you need." They worked late into the night, spreading papers across the table like battle plans. Darius showed her how to document everything, build a timeline, gather evidence. They started a list of other students who might have stories to share, incidents that had been swept under the rug. "The key," Darius explained, "is not just collecting information. It's knowing when and how to use it." He pulled up an email chain on his laptop. "See how the principal handled that racist incident last semester? That's a pattern we can prove now." Amaya nodded, taking notes in sharp, angry strokes. Her earlier tears had dried, replaced by a cold focus that matched her father's. When her phone buzzed again, she picked it up for the first time since the assembly. The screen was filled with notifications, some sympathetic messages from a few friends, but mostly cruel comments and jokes. Tagged photos of her running from the gym. A group chat someone had added her to titled "Baby Drama." Without hesitation, she opened each app and deleted her accounts. One by one, the windows of her social life closed. It felt like cutting anchors, letting her drift toward something new and dangerous. Opening a blank document on her laptop, she typed a simple title: "What They Did." She looked at her father, who nodded slowly. They both understood. This wasn't about hiding anymore. This wasn't about shame or fear or running away. This was about justice. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows as Amaya sat at the wooden table, her laptop open and a fresh legal pad beside it. Steam rose from her untouched chamomile tea, her mother's suggestion for morning sickness. The house was quiet except for the soft clicking of keys and her father's measured footsteps as he moved between his office and the kitchen. "Start with what you remember," Darius said, setting down another stack of papers. "Every incident, no matter how small, details matter." Amaya nodded, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "September 15th, she began typing. "Brent accidentally knocked my books out of my hands after chemistry. Called me scholarship case when I picked them up. The memory made her jaw clench. Good. What else? October 3rd. Trevor blocked my locker, wouldn't move. Made jokes about— She paused, took a breath. About how black girls shouldn't try to join student council. Darius pulled up a chair, his presence steady and grounding. Keep going. Time, place, witnesses. The memories flowed faster now. Cole tripping her in the cafeteria. Brent making monkey noises when she answered questions in class. Trevor following her to her car after school. Small cruelties that seemed minor alone, but formed a pattern when laid out in black and white. Look at this, Darius said, turning his tablet toward her. Sarah Martinez, class of 2021. She messaged me after seeing what happened yesterday. He'd created a secure email account specifically for collecting stories. Says Brent's group cyberstalked her until she transferred schools. Amaya read the message, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. They drove her out. She's willing to make a statement. Anonymously. Darius showed her more emails. 3 other former students, too. All with similar experiences. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jade, her lab partner. I'm so sorry about yesterday. Those guys are monsters. They did the same thing to my sister last year. Different topic. Same public humiliation. We have proof if you want it. More messages trickled in throughout the morning. Current students, scared but angry, offering screenshots and recordings. A junior named Marcus sent security camera footage of Brent shoving him into lockers. The yearbook photographer had pictures of Cole vandalizing cars in the student parking lot. They're all coming forward, Amaya said softly. People want justice, Darius replied. They just need someone brave enough to lead the way. Around noon, Darius's laptop pinged. Found something interesting in the school board minutes, he said, scanning the document. 3 harassment complaints against Brent were filed last spring. All mysteriously disappeared from the record. Amaya leaned over to look. His dad? Chairman Caldwell called them unfounded accusations and moved to dismiss. Darius pulled up more files. But the original complaints were logged in the system. They just needed someone who knew where to look. How did you get access to these? A slight smile crossed her father's face. 20 years of military intelligence work teaches you a few things about information gathering. They worked through the afternoon, building their case piece by piece. Amaya created a timeline of incidents, cross-referenced with witness statements and evidence. Darius mapped out the power structure, how Brent's father protected the boys, how the principal looked the other way, how the system was designed to silence victims. At 4 p.m., Amaya's phone lit up with a message from Lisa, a quiet girl from her English class. I have recordings, the text read, of Brent and his friends planning things. I sit behind them in study hall and started documenting after they targeted my brother. I was too scared to come forward before. Perfect, Darius said when Amaya showed him. Audio evidence is powerful. Ask if she's willing to share. By evening, their kitchen table looked like a war room. Papers covered every surface, sticky notes created connection webs, and Amaya's document had grown to 15 pages. Her father worked silently at his laptop, his military training evident in his methodical approach. Suddenly, Darius straightened in his chair. Found it. What? The email archive. He turned the screen so she could see. Every communication between staff members about harassment complaints for the past 3 years, including ones they thought they'd deleted. Amaya scanned the emails, her anger rising. Messages from teachers reporting abuse, met with instructions to handle it quietly. Warnings about the Caldwell family's influence. Principal Matthews telling staff to avoid documentation of certain incidents. They knew, she whispered. They knew everything that was happening, and they just covered it up. Now we can prove it. Darius started downloading the emails. This is what we needed: evidence of systematic negligence and active concealment. Amaya looked at the wall of evidence they'd gathered in just one day. Testimonies, photos, videos, documents, emails, a full picture of corruption and cruelty that had been hiding in plain sight. She felt something shift inside her, a hardening of resolve. "What's our next move?" she asked. The Saturday morning sun cast long shadows across the nearly empty parking lot of May's Diner, a worn-down establishment just outside the Clark County line. Amaya watched through the window as her father exchanged a firm handshake with Mr. Hill, a tall man in pressed khakis and a navy blazer. "Been too long, brother," Mr. Hill said, as they settled into a corner booth away from other customers. His voice was deep and measured, like her father's. "Wish it were better circumstances," Darius replied, sliding a thick manila folder onto the table. Mr. Hill turned to Amaya, his expression softening. "Your father tells me you're ready to fight back. Smart girl." The waitress brought coffee for the men and water for Amaya. She stirred her straw, choosing her words carefully. "I want them to face real consequences, not just a suspension or detention." "Show him what we've gathered," Darius said. Amaya opened her laptop, while her father spread out key documents. Mr. Hill reviewed everything methodically: the harassment timeline, witness statements, recovered emails, and photos of vandalized property. "This is thorough," he said, pausing at the school board minutes. "And disturbing. Classic pattern of institutional protection for privileged offenders." He took a long sip of coffee. "We can file a Title IX complaint. The pregnancy discrimination alone violates federal law. Add in the racial harassment and systematic cover-up." He shook his head. "The district's exposure here is significant." "What exactly is Title IX?" Amaya asked. "Federal law that prohibits discrimination in schools," Mr. Hill explained. "Covers gender-based harassment, which includes pregnancy discrimination. They're required to protect you from a hostile environment." He tapped the stack of emails. Instead, they enabled one. The waitress brought plates of eggs and toast, but Amaya was too focused to eat. "What do we do first?" "We document your testimony," Mr. Hill said, pulling out his phone. "Video statement, while everything's fresh. Then we draft the formal complaint." He looked at Darius. "You've taught her well, gathering evidence before confronting them directly." "She did most of it herself," Darius said quietly. Pride warmed his voice. They found a quiet spot behind the diner. Mr. Hill positioned Amaya against the brick wall, checking the lighting. "Just tell your story," he said. "Start from the beginning." Amaya took a deep breath, looking straight into the camera. "My name is Amaya Carter. I'm 17 years old and 5 months pregnant. On Thursday, 3 students at Clark County High School, Brent Caldwell, Cole Dwyer, and Trevor Nash, stole my private medical information and displayed it during a school assembly." Her voice grew stronger as she continued, detailing months of harassment and the administration's failure to act. When she finished, Mr. Hill nodded approvingly. "Perfect. Clear, factual, compelling. This will be powerful when we release it." Back inside, they outlined next steps while finishing breakfast. Mr. Hill made notes on a legal pad. "I'll file the Title IX complaint Monday morning. That starts the formal process and puts them on notice. Then He was interrupted by a commotion near the entrance. Trevor Nash had walked in with his parents, spotted them, and frozen. His face went pale. "Let's go somewhere else," his mother said quickly, tugging his arm. "No," Trevor mumbled, still staring at Amaya. "I need to." He pulled away from his mother and approached their table. "Trevor," Mr. Hill said calmly. "Something on your mind?" The boy shifted nervously. I'm sorry," he blurted out, looking at Amaya. "What we did was wrong. Brent said it would just be a joke, but—" He swallowed hard. I can't sleep. My parents are furious. I don't want any part of this anymore. Bit late for that, Darius said. I know. Trevor's voice cracked. But I'll tell the truth. About everything. Brent's getting scary, talking about making sure Amaya stays quiet. I told him to stop, but he won't listen. Mr. Hill pulled out his phone. Would you like to make a statement? Trevor nodded quickly. His parents, hovering nearby, exchanged worried looks, but didn't interfere. After recording Trevor's confession, they watched him leave with his family. That's useful, Mr. Hill said. Shows the group is fracturing. Brent's losing control. Good, Amaya said firmly. They spent another hour reviewing the legal strategy. Mr. Hill explained how the complaint process would work, what evidence would be most compelling, and how to handle media interest. Speaking of media, Darius said, I reached out to Sandra Chen at the County Chronicle. She's been investigating the school board for months. Perfect timing, Mr. Hill replied. She's respected, thorough, won't be intimidated by the Caldwells. Amaya pulled out her phone and opened her email. I'll contact her now. See if she can meet tonight. Remember, Mr. Hill said, as they prepared to leave, you're not just fighting for yourself. This case could change how the whole district handles harassment. Make it harder for them to protect bullies. Outside, Amaya hugged him tightly. Thank you. Thank your father, he replied. He called me the minute you decided to fight back. Said his daughter was ready to change things. He smiled. He was right. On the drive home, Amaya checked her messages. 3 texts from Trevor. Brent's freaking out. Says his dad will handle everything. Be careful. She showed them to her father. They're scared, Darius said simply. Good. Her phone pinged again. Sandra Chen had agreed to meet that evening. Amaya stared out the window, watching familiar streets pass by. Everything looked different now. The school she'd tried to hide in. The town that had looked away. The people who thought she'd stay quiet. She pressed her hand to her stomach, feeling her daughter move. We're done hiding, she whispered. Sunday morning light filtered through Amaya's bedroom curtains as she sat cross-legged on her bed, staring at her phone's camera. She'd changed shirts 3 times before settling on a simple gray t-shirt that didn't hide her pregnancy. Just speak from your heart, her mother had said, squeezing her shoulder before leaving her alone to record. Amaya took a deep breath and pressed record. My name is Amaya Carter. I'm 17 years old, and this is my story. Her voice was steady, clear. Last Thursday, 3 students at Clark County High School decided to humiliate me by stealing and displaying my private medical information during a school assembly. She shifted slightly, letting the camera capture her profile. Yes, I'm pregnant. 5 months. I wasn't ready to share that with everyone, but Brent Caldwell, Cole Dwyer, and Trevor Nash took that choice away from me. They thought they could shame me into silence. Her eyes hardened. They were wrong. For 15 minutes, she detailed everything. The months of subtle harassment, the stolen ultrasound, the assembly incident, the administration's inaction. She described how Brent's father, as school board chair, had previously dismissed complaints about his son's behavior. This isn't just about me, she continued. It's about every student who's been bullied, harassed, or silenced at Clark County High. It's about a system that protects certain students while ignoring others. It's about administrators who look the other way, because it's easier than confronting racism and discrimination. She leaned forward slightly. To everyone who's been afraid to speak up, I hear you, I see you, and I'm not backing down. After reviewing the video once, she uploaded it to YouTube and shared the link on local community pages. Her hands shook slightly as she pressed post, but her resolve was firm. Within hours, the video had thousands of views. Comments and messages flooded in. Stay strong, Amaya. We support you. This happened to my daughter last year. Same boys. Nothing was done. Thank you for speaking up. It's time someone did. Anonymous accounts began sharing their own stories of harassment at Clark County High. A former student described how Brent had cyberbullied her until she transferred schools. Another recalled Cole and Trevor vandalizing his car with racial slurs. Each story reinforced the pattern Mr. Hill had identified. By afternoon, local news sites had picked up the story. Sandra Chen from the County Chronicle shared the video with a detailed article about the school board's history of ignoring harassment complaints. Amaya's phone buzzed constantly with notifications. She read each message carefully, saving screenshots of the most important ones for Mr. Hill. Her mother brought her lunch, but she was too focused to eat. Around 4 o'clock, her father called her downstairs. "Look at this," he said, showing her an emergency notice on the school district's website. The board had scheduled a special meeting for Monday evening to address recent allegations of misconduct. Minutes later, a local news site posted a statement from Richard Caldwell, Brent's father. "As board chair, I'm deeply concerned by attempts to weaponize both race and pregnancy to attack our school's reputation. These inflammatory accusations ignore our district's strong anti-bullying policies and commitment to equality. We will address this disruption appropriately." Amaya read it twice, then laughed quietly. "He sounds scared." "He should be," her mother said from the kitchen. More responses poured in throughout the evening. The local NAACP chapter offered support. A parents' group demanded Caldwell's resignation. The superintendent released a carefully worded statement promising a thorough investigation. Trevor's confession video, recorded at the diner, began circulating in group chats. Cole deleted his social media accounts. Brent posted an angry denial that his father quickly made him take down. At dinner, Amaya scrolled through the day's developments while picking at her food. The video had over 50,000 views now. Local TV stations were requesting interviews. "You've started something big," her mother said softly. Darius set down his fork and looked at his daughter. His expression was calm, but his eyes held fierce pride. "They've panicked," he said simply. "That's when they make mistakes." Monday morning arrived with a crisp chill that made Amaya pull her jacket tighter as she walked toward Clark County High's main entrance. Her heart pounded, but she kept her head high. No more bulky hoodies. She wore a fitted sweater that showed her small bump clearly. The usual morning chatter died down as she approached. Students stopped to stare, some whispering behind their hands. But then something unexpected happened. Jenny Martinez, a quiet girl from her AP Literature class, stepped forward and gave her a quick hug. "We saw your video," Jenny whispered. "You're so brave." More students nodded in support as Amaya passed. A sophomore boy she didn't know gave her a thumbs up. Sarah Chen, the newspaper editor, smiled and mouthed, "Thank you." Not everyone was supportive. A group of girls who usually hung around Brent shot her dirty looks. Brad Thompson, Cole's basketball teammate, made a loud comment about attention seekers. But their words felt hollow now, like desperate attempts to maintain a crumbling status quo. At her locker, Amaya found small notes of encouragement slipped through the vents. One read, "They did the same to my sister last year. Thank you for speaking up." First period was AP Calculus, which she shared with Trevor. He sat in his usual spot, but kept his eyes fixed on his desk, shoulders hunched. When their teacher paired them for practice problems, Trevor quietly asked to work alone instead. During third period English, Amaya noticed Cole pacing in the hallway, having what looked like a heated phone conversation. His face was red, and he kicked a trash can before a teacher ordered him back to class. At lunch, the cafeteria's usual social hierarchy showed visible cracks. Trevor sat alone instead of at his regular table with Brent and Cole. Other students who normally gravitated toward the popular crowd found different seats. The change was subtle, but undeniable. Brent and Cole huddled at their table, phones out, faces dark with anger as they scrolled through what was probably another wave of social media responses to Amaya's video. Brent caught her looking and held her gaze, his expression pure hatred. "Did you see the news?" Lisa, a girl from track team, slid into the seat next to Amaya. The State Athletic Association is reviewing Cole's scholarship. Something about character requirements. Amaya nodded, taking a bite of her sandwich. She'd seen the email from Mr. Hill about it that morning. Between classes, she overheard snippets of conversations about the emergency board meeting scheduled for that evening. Several students were planning to attend with their parents. The local news vans parked outside suggested it would be well covered. During 7th period chemistry, Brent was called to the principal's office. He returned 20 minutes later, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. The teacher said nothing, another small sign of how things were shifting. After the final bell, Amaya stopped at her locker to grab books for her environmental club meeting. Through the hallway window, she saw Brent and Cole in an intense discussion by Cole's truck. Brent grabbed Cole's shoulder, speaking forcefully while pointing toward the gym. Cole nodded, his expression hardening. Trevor approached them hesitantly, but Brent waved him away with obvious disgust. Trevor stood there for a moment, then turned and walked to his own car, shoulders slumped. "Coward!" Brent called after him loud enough for several students to hear. The environmental club meeting was scheduled for 3:30 in the science lab. Amaya texted her dad that she'd be staying late. He replied immediately, "Be careful. Call when you're done." As she walked toward the science wing, she passed the gym where the basketball team was practicing. Cole's angry voice echoed through the open doors as he argued with their coach. Something about missing practice for a lawyer's meeting. The hallways gradually emptied as most students headed home. A few staff members nodded to Amaya as they passed, their expressions a mix of concern and something that looked like respect. She didn't notice Brent's car was still in the side parking lot, or that Cole had moved his truck near the gym's back entrance. Her mind was on the project presentation she needed to give, and the board meeting that would start in a few hours. Mr. Hill had helped her prepare a statement. Her father would be there, along with several other parents and students ready to speak. For the first time in months, she felt truly powerful. They thought they could shame her into hiding. Instead, they'd given her a voice that was getting louder by the day. The science lab was empty when she arrived. She was early. Amaya set her bag down and began arranging chairs for the meeting, unaware that outside, Brent was texting Cole, "Ready?" The environmental club meeting ended early when Mrs. Peterson called in sick. Amaya gathered her things, checking her phone. 4:15 p.m. Most of the parking lot would be empty by now, except for a few cars belonging to sports teams finishing practice. She pushed open the heavy metal door, stepping into the late afternoon sunlight. The air had grown colder, and dark clouds threatened rain. Her shoes crunched on loose gravel as she walked toward the side lot, where her father would pick her up. A truck's door slammed somewhere behind her. "Hey, Carter!" Brent's voice cut through the quiet. He stepped out from behind a parked pickup, blocking her path. "Going somewhere?" Amaya's heart jumped, but she kept walking, grip tightening on her backpack strap. She'd learned enough from her father to recognize when someone was trying to control her movement. "Back off, Brent." Her voice came out steady and clear. "Or what?" Cole appeared from between two cars, moving to cut off her escape route toward the main road. "You'll make another crying video about it?" They were herding her toward the back of the lot, away from the school buildings. Amaya planted her feet, refusing to be backed into a corner. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "Control the space. Don't let them dictate your position. Last chance," she warned. "Walk away." Brent's face twisted into an ugly smirk. He stepped closer, shoving her shoulder hard. "Or what? You'll waddle after us?" Amaya stumbled, but caught herself. She saw Trevor standing by the gym entrance, watching but not moving to help. His face was pale. Cole lunged for her backpack, trying to throw her off balance. But Amaya was ready. She let the bag slip off her shoulder, using the momentum to spin away from his grasp. Her elbow caught him hard in the ribs, another lesson from her father. Use their own force against them. "You're dead for that," Cole wheezed, doubling over. Brent grabbed for her arm, but Amaya dropped low and swept her leg out, just like she'd practiced countless times in the backyard. His feet went out from under him, and he hit the gravel with a satisfying thud. Cole recovered and charged at her, but his movement was sloppy, fueled by rage. Amaya sidestepped, letting him stumble past. As he turned, she drove her knee up into his stomach. He collapsed, gagging. "You crazy!" Brent started to push himself up, but Amaya was faster. She kicked his arm out from under him, sending him back to the ground. "I said back off!" Her voice rang out across the parking lot, strong and clear. Movement caught her eye. Ms. Rodriguez, the Spanish teacher, was running toward them from the faculty parking area. She must have heard the commotion. Cole tried one more desperate grab at Amaya's legs. She jumped back and brought her heel down hard on his outstretched hand. He howled in pain. "What is going on here?" Ms. Rodriguez demanded, reaching them just as Brent scrambled to his feet. "She attacked us!" Brent pointed at Amaya, his face red with humiliation. "She just went crazy." "That's not what I saw." Ms. Rodriguez's voice was ice cold. "Office, all of you. Now." Cole staggered up, holding his stomach. His hand was already swelling where Amaya had stomped it. Brent's expensive jeans were torn at the knee, gravel embedded in his palms. Amaya retrieved her backpack, wincing at the scrapes on her knuckles. Her hip ached where she'd twisted to avoid Cole's first grab, but satisfaction burned brighter than the pain. She'd handled it, exactly as her father had taught her. Trevor was gone, probably ran when he heard Ms. Rodriguez coming. Amaya didn't care. His cowardice wasn't her problem. "Ms. Carter, are you all right?" Ms. Rodriguez asked, her eyes noting Amaya's pregnant belly with concern. "I'm fine." Amaya stood straight, chin high. "But I'd like to call my father." "Of course." Ms. Rodriguez glared at the boys. "Move, principal's office, now." As they walked, Amaya heard Cole mutter to Brent, "Your dad can't fix this one." She smiled slightly, tasting victory. They'd thought she was an easy target, the quiet, pregnant girl they could intimidate. Instead, they'd learned what her father had always taught her. True strength isn't about size or power. It's about preparation, focus, and the willingness to stand your ground. 20 minutes later, Darius's truck pulled up to the school. He found Amaya in the nurse's office, holding an ice pack to her hip. Without a word, he examined her scraped knuckles, cleaning each one carefully with antiseptic from the first aid kit. When he finished wrapping the bandages, he met her eyes and gave a single, approving nod. "You handled it." Those 3 words carried the weight of every lesson, every practice session, every conversation about standing up for herself. Amaya nodded back, understanding flowing between them. Outside the nurse's office, they could hear the principal on the phone, his voice strained as he tried to explain to Brent's father why assault charges were being discussed. But that wasn't Amaya's concern anymore. She'd faced them on their own terms and won. Her baby kicked, as if offering its own small celebration. Amaya placed a hand on her belly, smiling. She had protected them both, just like her father had taught her. Not with fear or cruelty, but with skill, courage, and the simple power of refusing to back down. The community center's meeting room buzzed with tension. Metal folding chairs scraped against linoleum, as people squeezed into every available space. Local reporters clutched notepads near the walls, and parents whispered in tight clusters. At the front, 7 school board members sat behind a long table, shuffling papers and avoiding eye contact. Amaya smoothed her navy blue dress, no longer hiding her pregnancy. The fabric was crisp and professional, a deliberate choice. Next to her, Darius wore his formal military uniform, rows of medals catching the fluorescent light. They sat in the front row, a laptop and thick folder between them. "Nervous?" Darius asked quietly. Amaya touched the index cards in her lap. "No, just ready." Board Chairman Richard Caldwell, Brent's father, called the meeting to order with 3 sharp raps of his gavel. His expensive suit couldn't hide the strain around his eyes. "Before we begin public comments," Caldwell started, "I want to remind everyone that personal attacks and unfounded accusations— Point of order." A woman 2 seats down from him raised her hand. "Given the nature of tonight's complaints, you should recuse yourself from chairing this discussion, Mr. Caldwell." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Caldwell's jaw tightened, but he surrendered the gavel to the vice chair, Dr. Martinez. "First speaker," Dr. Martinez announced, "Master Sergeant Darius Carter." Darius stood, his movements precise. He connected his laptop to the projector, while Amaya handed out packets to each board member. The room fell silent. "Good evening." Darius's voice carried authority without aggression. "I'm here as a parent and concerned citizen to present evidence of systematic harassment, discrimination, and administrative misconduct at Clark County High School." The first slide appeared, a timeline of documented incidents. Over the past 8 months, multiple students have reported bullying and harassment by a group of senior boys. These reports were consistently ignored or dismissed. Principal Matthews shifted uncomfortably in his seat near the board table. Darius clicked to the next slide, screenshots of emails between administrators. When parents complained about racial harassment, they were told there was insufficient evidence. But these internal emails show staff members actively discouraged students from filing formal reports. He played a short audio clip, the principal telling a teacher to handle it quietly when she reported witnessing harassment. Matthews started to stand, but Dr. Martinez waved him back down. "Furthermore," Darius continued, "we have evidence that board leadership deliberately buried previous complaints to protect certain students." The next slide showed redacted disciplinary records with Brent's name clearly visible, alongside notes from Caldwell marking them resolved internally. This pattern of cover-ups created an environment where privileged students felt untouchable. The recent public humiliation of my daughter was a direct result of this failure in leadership. Darius played the assembly video. The crowd watched in horror as Amaya's private medical information was displayed without consent. Several parents gasped when security footage showed the boys breaking into her locker to steal the ultrasound image. And when these same boys physically attacked my daughter in the parking lot, Darius's voice hardened slightly. They expected no consequences, because there never had been any. Caldwell couldn't keep still. "This is a biased presentation of—" "Mr. Caldwell?" Dr. Martinez cut in. "You've recused yourself. Please wait your turn to speak." Darius nodded to Amaya. She stood, smoothing her dress again, and faced the board. Her prepared statement felt heavy in her hands, but her voice rang clear. "My name is Amaya Carter. I'm 17 years old, 5 months pregnant, and I refuse to be ashamed." She met each board member's eyes. "I kept my pregnancy private because it was my choice to make. That choice was stolen from me by boys who knew they would face no consequences." The room was absolutely still now. Even the reporters had stopped writing to listen. "I'm not here to ask for sympathy. I'm here to demand accountability." Amaya's voice grew stronger. "Every student deserves to feel safe at school. Every parent deserves to know their child will be protected. But at Clark County High, only certain families matter. Only certain complaints get heard. She turned slightly to face the crowd. I'm not the first student they've targeted, but I want to be the last. We have statements from 15 other students describing similar harassment. We have evidence of at least 7 formal complaints that mysteriously vanished from school records. Principal Matthews stood again. These accusations are documented. Amaya cut him off. Every incident, every email, every cover-up, it's all in the packets we provided. She placed her statement on the table and gripped the podium. You can't bury this anymore. You can't ignore us anymore. And you can't pretend this isn't exactly what it looks like. Systematic abuse of power to protect privileged bullies at the expense of other students' safety and dignity. The vice chair called a 10-minute recess. Board members huddled together, flipping through the evidence packets. Reporters pressed forward, but Darius smoothly guided Amaya back to their seats. When the meeting resumed, Dr. Martinez spoke first. Given the severity of these allegations and the substantial evidence presented, I move that we vote immediately on 2 measures. First, the suspension of Principal Matthews pending a full investigation. Second, the removal of Chairman Caldwell from board leadership, also pending investigation. Seconded. 3 voices called at once. Caldwell's face had gone from red to pale. This is a witch hunt. These so-called documents are authenticated, Darius interrupted calmly, by 3 separate digital forensics experts. Their certifications are included in your packets. The vote was quick and unanimous. 7 hands raised for both measures. Principal Matthews slumped in his chair. Caldwell grabbed his briefcase and stormed out, leaving his nameplate behind. Dr. Martinez banged the gavel. Principal Matthews is suspended effective immediately. Mr. Caldwell is removed from his position as chairman. A full investigation will begin tomorrow morning. She looked directly at Amaya. Thank you for your courage in bringing this forward. This meeting is adjourned. People surged forward to talk to Amaya and Darius, but they gathered their materials quietly. They had said what needed to be said. The evidence would speak for itself now. Outside, rain had started to fall. Amaya watched drops darken the sidewalk while her father pulled the car around. She felt lighter somehow, even with her baby bump growing heavier each day. The truth was finally out, all of it, and no one could hide from it anymore. The district-wide email arrived at 9 a.m. Wednesday morning. Amaya read it on her phone while sitting at the kitchen table, her father looking over her shoulder. Dear Clark County School District community, we write to acknowledge serious failures in our leadership and policies regarding student safety and harassment. Recent evidence has exposed a pattern of discrimination, negligence, and cover-ups that violated the trust of our students and families. Amaya scrolled through the carefully worded apology, noting how they mentioned systematic changes and immediate corrective action. Her mother placed a plate of toast beside her. They're running scared, Darius observed, pouring his coffee. Good, Amaya said. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. The local paper's headline read, 3 Clark County students face assault charges. Colleges withdraw acceptances. The article detailed how Brent, Cole, and Trevor had been suspended pending expulsion hearings. Security footage of the parking lot attack had been turned over to police. Their early admission offers, Brent to Vanderbilt, Cole to Georgia Tech, Trevor to UGA, had been rescinded after the schools learned of the charges. More stories emerged throughout the morning. A sophomore girl went public about Brent cornering her in the band room last year. 2 black students described Cole's racist taunts that teachers ignored. A junior boy posted about Trevor standing guard, while the others stole his phone and wallet. By lunchtime, the local news was interviewing former students about similar incidents going back 3 years. See teen. Clark County bullies trended on Georgia Twitter. The State Department of Education announced an official investigation. Amaya's phone kept lighting up with supportive messages. "You gave us courage to speak up. Thank you for fighting back. They can't hurt us anymore." At the grocery store that afternoon, 3 different parents stopped to hug her. An elderly cashier squeezed her hand and whispered, "You did good, baby girl." Thursday morning, Amaya returned to school to find students wearing purple ribbons pinned to their shirts and backpacks. A junior named Maya explained, "Purple for healing and strength. We're done being silent." The pins spread like wildfire. Teachers started wearing them too. Even the cafeteria workers added purple bands to their hairnets. By Friday, the local craft store had sold out of purple ribbon. The changes came quickly after that. The school board appointed an independent investigator. New harassment reporting procedures were implemented. Anonymous tip boxes appeared in every hallway. Teachers underwent mandatory bias training. Brent's father resigned from his law firm before they could fire him. Cole's family suddenly put their house up for sale. Trevor's parents sent a handwritten apology letter to Amaya, which she read once and filed away without responding. A week after the hearing, Amaya stood in front of Ms. Rodriguez's 9th grade homeroom. 30 fresh faces looked up at her, some curious, some nervous, all attentive. "2 months ago," she began, "I thought staying quiet was staying safe. I thought if I just kept my head down and didn't make waves, they'd leave me alone." She rested one hand on her growing belly. "I was wrong." The students leaned forward slightly. "Silence doesn't protect you. It protects them. The bullies, the abusers, the ones who think their money or their names or their daddy's position makes them untouchable." She paced slowly across the front of the room. "But here's what I learned. They're only untouchable if we let them be. They only have power if we stay quiet. And when we finally speak up, when we stand together and tell the truth, they're not so powerful anymore." A girl in the front row raised her hand. "Weren't you scared?" "Every day," Amaya admitted. "I'm still scared sometimes. But I'm more scared of what happens when good people stay silent, when we see something wrong and look the other way, when we let bullies think they can hurt people without consequences." She gestured to the purple pin on her sweater. "This isn't just about what happened to me. It's about all of us. It's about saying no more secrets, no more cover-ups, no more looking the other way while people get hurt." Another student spoke up. "But what if nobody believes us? Then you keep telling the truth until someone listens. You document everything. You find allies. You build evidence. And you remember that your voice matters, even when people try to silence it." Amaya looked at each young face in turn. "Your silence is powerful. But not in the way you think. When you stay silent, you give power to the wrong people. When you speak up, you take that power back." The bell rang, but nobody moved. "Remember this," Amaya said softly. "Remember that you have a choice. And remember that your silence won't protect you. It only protects them." The May sunlight streamed through the hospital windows as Amaya gripped the bed rails, her mother Lila wiping sweat from her forehead with a cool cloth. The contractions had started at dawn, and now, 14 hours later, the delivery room buzzed with focused energy. "You're doing great, baby," Lila whispered, squeezing her daughter's hand. "Just breathe through it." Darius stood on Amaya's other side, solid and steady as always. His military composure slipped only slightly when another contraction hit, and Amaya cried out. He'd faced combat zones and terrorist cells, but watching his daughter in pain tested his strength in new ways. Mr. Hill waited outside in the hallway, pacing occasionally. He'd arrived early that morning with coffee and newspapers. The latest headline read, "Clark County Schools Adopt Landmark Anti-Harassment Policy." He'd smiled, knowing Amaya's fight had already created lasting change before her daughter even entered the world. "Almost there," the doctor encouraged. "One more big push." Amaya bore down, squeezing her parents' hands. The pain ripped through her body, but she'd learned about pain these past months, how to face it, how to push through it, how to transform it into power. "I see the head," the nurse announced. "Dark, curly hair, just like Mama." Lila dabbed Amaya's forehead again. "You hear that, baby? She's almost here." Amaya gathered her remaining strength. The morning light painted the room in soft gold as she pushed one final time. A sharp cry pierced the air, strong and defiant like its mother. "It's a girl!" the doctor proclaimed, lifting the squalling infant. Tears streamed down Amaya's face as they placed the tiny bundle on her chest. Through her exhaustion, she studied every detail of her daughter's face. The button nose, the rosebud mouth, the dark eyes already blinking at the world with curiosity. "She's perfect," Lila whispered, touching the baby's cheek with one finger. Darius cleared his throat, fighting back his own emotions. He'd helped train his daughter to fight back against injustice. But this tiny new life, represented a different kind of strength. The nurse helped clean and swaddle the baby while they completed the post-birth procedures. Mr. Hill knocked softly and entered, carrying a small purple teddy bear. "May I meet the newest fighter in the Carter family?" he asked with a gentle smile. Amaya nodded, and the nurse placed the wrapped bundle back in her arms. The baby had settled now, making small cooing sounds as she nestled against her mother's chest. "Have you chosen a name?" the nurse asked, clipboard ready. Amaya looked down at her daughter. She'd known the name for months, had whispered it to her growing belly late at night when the world felt too heavy. "Nia," she said clearly. "It means purpose in Swahili." Darius placed his strong hand on Amaya's shoulder, his voice thick with pride. "She was born into victory." The words settled over the room like a blessing. This child would never know the shame or fear that had marked her mother's pregnancy. She would grow up knowing the story of how her mother fought back, how she turned humiliation into triumph, how she changed an entire school system before her daughter's first breath. Leela adjusted the tiny purple hat on Nia's head. "She's got your spirit already," she told Amaya. "Look how she holds her head up." Mr. Hill chuckled. "Of course she does. She's a Carter woman." The nurse finished the paperwork and dimmed the lights slightly. "You should rest now," she advised. "Both of you need it." Amaya barely heard her. She was lost in Nia's face, memorizing every detail. The baby's tiny fingers had wrapped around one of her own, holding on with surprising strength. The others quietly stepped out, leaving mother and daughter alone in the peaceful room. Amaya shifted carefully in the bed, cradling Nia close as fatigue finally overtook her. The morning sunlight spilled across them both as she drifted off to sleep, still holding her daughter, her purpose, her victory, her new beginning. The spring breeze rustled through the newly bloomed cherry trees as Amaya Carter walked up the familiar steps of Clark County High. 6-month-old Nia was snuggled against her chest in a purple baby carrier, dark eyes wide and curious. The morning sun caught the gold lettering above the entrance. Education, equity, excellence. Words added just last month. Amaya paused at the heavy front doors, memories washing over her. A year ago, she'd pushed through these same doors wearing baggy hoodies, head down, trying to hide. Now she stood tall, her daughter secure against her heart, ready to walk these halls on her own terms. The main office staff smiled and waved as she signed in. "Ms. Carter, is that little Nia?" Mrs. Peterson hurried around her desk to peek at the baby. "Oh, she's gotten so big." "Growing like a weed," Amaya replied, adjusting Nia's tiny purple bow. The baby gurgled happily at the attention. As they turned toward the main lobby, Amaya caught her breath. The mural stretched across the far wall, impossible to miss. Bold strokes of purple and gold depicted her profile, chin lifted, eyes fierce and determined. Beside it, a smaller image showed her holding Nia, both of them bathed in sunrise colors. The artist had captured something essential, not victimhood, but victory. Below the mural hung a framed document, the Carter Hill Student Protection Act. The new district-wide policy outlined clear consequences for harassment, bullying, and discrimination. Amaya stepped closer, reading the familiar words she'd helped draft. Each line represented hours of work with Mr. Hill, countless meetings, and hard-won changes. Students began filtering in for first period, many stopping to smile or wave. A freshman girl approached shyly, clutching her books. Miss Carter? I just wanted to say, your story helped me speak up about something that happened to me. Thank you. Amaya touched the girl's shoulder gently. Stay strong. You're not alone anymore. The girl nodded and hurried off to class. Nia squirmed in her carrier, reaching for the colorful mural with tiny fingers. That's right, baby girl, Amaya whispered. That's our story up there. She continued down the main hallway, past the gym where everything had changed that terrible morning. The projection screen had been replaced with a new digital board. The bleachers where students had laughed at her ultrasound were now painted with messages of inclusion and respect. Ms. Rodriguez's classroom door was open, warm morning light spilling into the hallway. The English teacher looked up from her desk and broke into a wide smile. Amaya and little Miss Nia. She rushed to greet them, cooing at the baby. I was hoping you'd visit soon. Had to show Nia where her mama made history, Amaya said, settling into a familiar desk near the window. This classroom had been her sanctuary during those dark days. Miss Rodriguez had never judged, only supported. The students still talk about you, Ms. Rodriguez said, perching on the edge of her desk. You changed things here, Amaya. Really changed them. The boys? Amaya asked quietly. Brent and Cole transferred to private schools. Trevor stayed. He's actually joined the Student Equity Committee. Speaks out against bullying now. Amaya nodded, unsurprised. She'd seen the change in Trevor that day in the parking lot, when he'd stood back and let her fight. Sometimes transformation came from unexpected places. A bell rang in the distance. Students hurried past the classroom, several pausing to wave or smile. No whispers followed her now, no coded jokes or cruel laughter. These halls knew her name, not as gossip, but as legend. Remember when you told me to keep my head up? Amaya asked Ms. Rodriguez. Even when things were worst? The teacher smiled. You never needed me to tell you that. You had that strength all along. Nia began fussing, ready for her morning bottle. Amaya stood, gathering her diaper bag. We should go. But I wanted you to meet her, and to see the mural. It's beautiful, Ms. Rodriguez said, but not as beautiful as the real thing. She hugged Amaya carefully, mindful of the baby. You're always welcome here. They walked back through the now quiet halls, past classroom doors and lockers painted in the school's purple and gold. Everything looked different now. Brighter, more open, more real. Or maybe she was the one who had changed. Near the front entrance, a group of students worked on hanging a banner for an upcoming unity rally. They waved enthusiastically. Hi, Miss Carter. Hi, baby Nia. Amaya waved back, remembering how it felt to walk these halls alone. Now every corner held allies. Every face showed respect. She wasn't that pregnant girl anymore. She was Amaya Carter, the one who fought back, the one who won. She pushed open the heavy front doors, stepping into the warm spring morning. Nia's tiny hand patted her chest, seeking attention. Amaya smiled down at her daughter, at those bright eyes already full of curiosity and strength. Let them try me again. she said softly, holding Nia close as they walked into the sunlight. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.